at Google, Ashley Gardner. Ashley, would love for you to hop on and just let everybody know a little bit about you. Hey, hon, and how people can connect with you.
Absolutely. So a little bit about me. I am a wife, a mother of two beautiful kids. By day, I do work at Google. I am directly impacting the workforce at Google and the diversity that we have present at Google. And by night, I manage a platform entitled Growing with the Gardeners, as you can see here. And there I just share my life experiences and promote Black excellence. So thank you so much for having me, Christine.
No, thank you. You look flawless. You look amazing. We always seem to pull everything together. So as employees, as Black moms are employees in the workforce, how can we build inclusive communities and safe spaces inside our corporations?
Absolutely. So in preparation for this discussion, I know we spoke in the past and we really wanted to hone in on inclusivity for our mamas, our Black mamas in the workforce. I looked up some data and I found this interesting data set, a study done by women in the workplace. I'm going to read it because I thought it was super impactful. Only 86% of Black women feel included in the workplace compared to 94% of white women feeling included at the workplace. That's about a 9% gap, okay? And that's a really big gap. And I think the reason Black women, we feel this way is because we're less supported by our managers generally. We receive less recognition for our work. We receive fewer promotions. And that results in less pay, right? And so I think a lot of people actually touched on this before. A lot of speakers touched on this before I actually came on. But this all leads to feelings of not being included. And so when you think of an inclusive environment and the benefits of an inclusive environment, your employees are more engaged, they're more liberated, right, to create innovation. They feel okay to make mistakes because they understand that that's going to lead to a better product, and they're going to experience far more career growth because they're more comfortable and they have psychological safety. So understanding this data is exactly why it's important to create inclusive environments. And I understand that some workplaces, and we'll get more into that, do not really encourage or promote this. So we'll talk a little bit more about conservative workplaces, but I know a lot of Black women and moms in the workplace ask, like, but our company isn't doing that. Like, how do we establish something like that in our workplace? Who's gonna do that? And the answer is you, sis, you're gonna do it. And I can't highlight that the most because sometimes we wait for the next person to do it, but I just want to encourage everybody to create the space for themselves. You have the tools, you have what it takes to create an inclusive environment for you and your sisters. So what exactly does that look like? When I went through this model, I wanted to break down the two different types of companies. I think it's very important because you do have your more liberal companies who are going to be a lot more supportive in establishing and organizing this as an official community. And then you're going to have your more conservative companies who are unfortunately not going to support it as much. So a lot of these actions are going to be the same except for one piece. So I want to go through these actions as to how you can create a more inclusive environment for you and your sisters at work. The first thing I came up with is create documentation. You have to understand your vision for this community. You have to understand your mission. What do you want the members to take away from this community? It's important to establish that, and it's important to understand the rewards that they would actually get out of being a part of this community. For my more liberal companies, you want to go through with making this an official community. So make sure that you get leadership to sign off on all of the documentation and enforce an organized community. Now, with my more conservative companies, you might want to separate the community away from the workplace. And what this would look like is just maybe having a happy hour, right after work on Thursdays, or having a recurring virtual meeting each week where you can all just kind of sit down and share your grievances, share your experiences, and strategize on how y'all are going to make it to the top, But the other pieces remain the same. I think it's really important when you create community to listen to the participants in this community. You need to understand the need. You need to understand where that gap is so that you're able to put in a solution and move forward with that solution. And lastly, you want to implement the feedback that you receive from your community members and iterate based on that. So just a little bit of my thoughts and what I came up with for us women, Black women specifically, to create more inclusive environments in the workplace.
I mean, and honestly, who would know better than you, Ashley? You're at a very progressive and accelerated company, definitely thought leaders in the space as far as diversity and inclusion. Thank you so much for those thoughts. I would be remiss, however, if I didn't mention the fact that Black mothers right now are suffering with employment. Many of them are unemployed. Many of them are employers trying to figure out ways to raise capital or to make sure that they don't have to lay off anybody. I definitely wanted to touch on not only that, but also how those employees who are unemployed can work on developing themselves while they're in between jobs. And just want to make sure everybody's aware. If you have any questions, just send them through Ashley and I will answer them too. But wanted to just touch on that. So as you're in between jobs, and I'm reading my notes because it's a ton, I got a lot to say. Make sure you're gaining new skills. Make sure you're refreshing your online presence and your resume. Go on informational interviews. Don't be too proud to go on informational interviews. Volunteer your skills with nonprofits. Create new work with like-minded women like you. Freelance if you can. Reflect on your goals and your next steps. And then most importantly, because unemployment does take a toll on mental health, continue to take care of yourself and your mental health. Now, I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that a lot of those Black moms are unemployed because there are employers who aren't necessarily seeking them out. So to companies, our allies who are on this conference right now, I urge you, put your money where your mouth is. We've seen so many companies talking about their interest and their commitment to Black nonprofit organizations and activists and hiring diverse talent, but really put your money where your mouth is. I think that there's a wonderful campaign within the beauty industry showing exactly how many companies were talking about putting up. Were talking but weren't really putting up the diverse numbers. Yeah, you're very aware with the hashtag Put Up or Shut Up campaign. A lot of the companies who have committed to sponsoring and committed to improving lives for Black Americans, specifically Black mothers, don't necessarily have any African American women on their board of directors or in leadership roles. So, don't count on mainstream listicles like Entrepreneur's top 10 African Americans in media or Forbes top 10 African Americans in CPG. Don't count on those listicles to find top Black talent in your category. There's a lot of top Black talent out in the world that don't necessarily make it on those lists just because they're not friends with somebody. Move past diversity hires, and seek candidates that are outside of your traditional sources. So step outside of your comfort zone, go and reach out to HBCUs and other different organizations that have a very diverse talent pool. work hard to find applicants of color. Companies may incentivize moving forward, hiring diverse talent. That might be something that managers are incentivized against, but it might not be. So you have to step inside of yourself and personally incentivize yourself to do something good for humanity. Show a little bit of empathy. There may not be any money attached to it. So it's quite important to just realize that this is the right thing to do, because innovation is fueled by diversity and growth is fueled by innovation. So it's definitely not just in your best interest or in the Black mom's best interest for you to hire diverse talent. It's truly in the interest of the organization too. So just wanted to check and see if you had any final thoughts on that, Ashley, and also open it up to questions if anybody has any questions for us.
Yeah, I'll add one thing. I think everything you said was very beautiful, very honest, and very true. One thing I will add is something that we do at Google is we look at culture add versus culture fit, right? So a lot of companies weed out a lot of Black candidates because they are looking to see if they will actually fit in with the company, with the folks that are already hired, which generally are not underrepresented folks. And so it's very important for our allies to be in the room, advocate for people of color, specifically Black women and men, so that we can get inside and show you how much better we'll make your company, because we're ultimately a culture add. We look at experiences from a different lens. And so it's just important to evaluate it from that perspective rather than a culture fit perspective.
I love that. Again, you guys shifting the mindset a lot over there.
Yeah.
Great. So actually, I think that we are going to end a bit early, which is good because I have a pretty long closing. But I am going to thank you very much, Ashley. You look gorgeous. As we're saying backstage in the private chat, that lip is everything. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on and discussing.